Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Really happy that each of you could be here for this today's Higher Purpose Forum HGI co-hosted event on the unity of science, spirituality, and religion, which is a new focus for Higher Purpose Forum. We actually had two meetings on this topic last year, one with Thomas Cromwell and the second with Dr. Jonathan Wells. And now we've decided, because it's such an important part of the unificationist counter-proposal, to include it as one of our core topic areas. So this is the first of at least 4 sessions on this topic during these spring months. And as we begin today, I'd like to start by introducing, just for some comments, representing the co-host of this event, the HJ International Graduate School, Dean Stephen Boyd.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming this evening. It's a pleasure for HCI to be able to co-sponsor this series of programs. It's our pleasure to be able particularly to see on the panel Jim Edgerly, who is our current DMin student, and of course Henry Christopher and Dr. James Fleming, both who are graduates of HJI. We're very proud of all three. And we hope that the opportunity that you're giving us today to share this topic with you will give you insight not only into the topic itself, but also an insight into the role that HCI is playing and seeking to play as a home of thought. So we welcome you tonight. We look forward to a good conversation, and we look forward to future opportunities going forward in the very near future on similar topics. If you're interested in learning more about HJ International Graduate School for Peace and Public Leadership, which is our new name, formerly Unification Theological Seminary, I will be putting my contact information in the chat at some point, along with some links to our website about our programs of study. And if you're interested in applying, we'll send you that link also. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you tonight. It's our pleasure to join with Jim Edgerly and the Higher Purpose Forum on this important topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean Boyd. Is my screen, presentation screen fully visible right now?
Looks good.
Okay. Boy, I didn't get it to this top. Okay, sorry. All right, I neglected to put it at the top of the, okay. Very good. So today, here's a brief look at our agenda for this meeting. Our topic today for this presentation and discussion meeting is, the topic area is unity of science, spirituality, and religion. Our speaker is Henry Christopher, and he's going to talk sort of in a sense about the historical story about the quest, the attempt through history to create a more universal understanding, looking at the relationship, the interface between science and religion. And he will be followed by a respondent, Jim Fleming. And then we will have about a half an hour for moderated discussion. Here's the terms of our engagement for today. Please be aware that today's participants represent a range of faiths and perspectives. We're certainly not all unificationists. We're so happy that we are joined by a number of people from different faith communities and very different worldviews. And we want to make sure that the way this meeting proceeds, as in everything we do, that everyone feels welcome and included, and their perspectives are received and appreciated. Our discussion period, which will start at about 8 o'clock or so, 8:05, is a very important part of this program. So we encourage you to participate during our discussion portion. And there's 2 ways to do that. One is you could use the Zoom raise hand function so that the moderator can call on you. And you'll be called more or less in the order in which hands are raised. Or if you're not eager to speak in front of everybody, that's fine. You could certainly just post your comment or question in the chat, where it will be moderated by our chat moderator, who will, read from it and pick questions from it to go to our speakers, and that'll be Roger Witherell. He's here with us representing IAED. This meeting, I think you're aware, is being recorded. If you don't want to have we'd love you to put your camera on. We would appreciate that. But if you don't want to be recorded, then you can leave your camera off. And we will end this meeting no longer. That shouldn't say 6:30. That's an old time. That should say 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Sorry about that typo. Just like to say something quickly about Higher Purpose Forum. Higher Purpose Forum is a 501c3 organization founded in September 2019 as an independent project of unificationism. And we've had sessions like this, more or less 15 to 17 a year since late 2019. And we've sort of honed in on developing our worldview, which right now is titled Race and Providence in America. And then 4 areas of counter proposal, building a racially integrated culture, justice and economic democracy, and that's being developed cooperatively with Roger's organization, IAED. The unity of science, spirituality, and religion, that's today's topic area. And we'd like to start, hopefully soon, a 4th topic area, promoting the theology, the ideology of the worldview based upon the God-centered 3-generation family. Those are our focus areas. These are the people I'd like to offer quick thanks to who have been helping in these areas. Reverend Oliver, Jeffrey Kingsley and Christine Edwards, Alan Jessen, Henry Christopher, Roger and Danielle Wetherall. These people have all contributed so much to our content, as well as the HJI faculty and staff. Quite a few of them have been speakers and have helped us develop Higher Purpose Forum and our Higher Purpose Forum Steering Committee. A number of them are on the call today. Our upcoming meetings, we have a meeting on April 2nd on this topic area of building a racially integrated culture from a principled perspective. And then we have a very important conference, 3-day conference, which we're participating in. We're presenting section 4 on Friday evening on economic democracy. And then we have 3 after the April HJI conference. We're having 3 in sequence, 3 meetings on this topic of science, religion, and spirituality. Tuesday, April 23rd is Dr. Wilson. And then again, he'll speak on May 7th, the principal perspective on science according to Wally Wonbon, which is the original text of the divine principle. And then the final speaker in this session series would be Allison Wakeland. She's a professor at Widener University, and we don't yet have her topic, but it's on the same topic of the unity of science, spirituality, and religion. Here's the agenda for the HJI conference in April, and the session that we're hosting. HJI is a session 7 on Friday evening, economic democracy as an essential component to positive peace. And I would also like to bring your attention to session 3 earlier in the conference, Christology and Women, the Relevance for Peace, which is the topic that we had our last HPF HJI meeting on just a few weeks ago. So I'd like to very quickly introduce today's speakers. Our presenter today again is Henry Christopher. Henry is a graduate of the UTS HJI class of 1980. And he worked with the Washington Times as a graphic artist. And then for 1982 to 2002, following that, he spent 2 years in Seoul, Korea, as a director of a middle and high school program for English speakers. Upon returning to the United States, Henry became the UTS admissions director in 2004 and opened the UTS Community Relationship Office to create a working relationship with the residents of the hamlet of Berrytown and the town of Red Hook, where the school was located. That's in upstate New York. And presently, Henry is the UTS Financial Aid Director, and he oversees the affairs of international students studying at HJI. And most relevantly, for the last at least 10 years, Henry has been researching, sort of on a lay basis, He doesn't have an advanced degree in this topic, but he's done a lot of reading, researching, and writing on this topic of today's meeting, the interface of science and religion. And he's going to present a lot of his findings during this session today. Our respondent is Jim Fleming. Jim has been the Charles A. Dana Professor of Science and Technology and Society at Colby College in Waterville, Maine, as well as a research associate at the Smithsonian Institution. He earned degrees in astronomy a bachelor's degree in astronomy from Penn State University, in atmospheric science from Colorado State University, and a PhD in history from Princeton University. Jim's teachings bridge the sciences and humanities, and his research interests involve the history of the geophysical science, especially meteorology and climate change. And you can see here a number of his books, including books on meteorology, historical perspectives on climate change, the calendar effect, fixing the sky, inventing atmospheric science, and a book titled The First Woman, Joan Simpson, and the Tropical Atmosphere. So obviously Jim's been working very hard. And we're really honored to have Jim as our respondent today. So that wraps up my introduction. I hope that didn't take too much of our time. Thank you again all for being here, and we welcome our primary speaker for today, Henry Christopher.
Okay, thank you, and welcome, and thank you for attending our forum tonight. I would like to begin by saying that although I'm not a scientist or a theologian, I have been interested in the unity of science and religion for many years, and I've done a lot of reading and research in this area. But tonight I'm going to talk on the history of science and religion. And although the presentation is not too long, it is full of a lot of facts and information, and it's in chronological order. So I will read directly from the PowerPoint slides rather than talk off the top of my head, because I just don't want to mess it up and get everything out of order and end up confusing you and confusing myself too. So I hope you find it interesting and informative.
Beautiful.
Okay, so let's begin. The unity of science, spirituality, and religion. Can we save humankind and the planet from ourselves? Human history has been, in a sense, a search for meaning. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Who are we? Why do we search for meaning through science and religion? Because we are both physical and spiritual beings. Science searches for the physical realm, and religion searches the spiritual realm. Presently, there's a conflict between science and religion, and that is indicative of a conflict in our own body and spirit. Whoops. Conflicting stories. There are basically two main stories about where we came from. One is the biblical story in Genesis, and the other is the paleoanthropologist story of human evolution. Science's story. Hominids emerged 25 to 5 million years ago. These are the great apes, gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, and humans. Hominins emerged 7 million years ago to the present, with many prehistoric species, such as Australopithecus and later human species, or Homo. Religion story. This comes from Genesis. God made Adam from the dust of the earth and made Eve from Adam's rib. Fundamentalists and evangelical Christians believe the universe, the earth, and all life was created somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years ago. Most major world religions now, though, as well as the Catholic and mainline Protestant churches, believe in a theistic evolution, which God is guiding. So this conflict between science and religion these days comes down to a conflict between atheistic evolution and fundamentalist Christian creationism. But I think it can be resolved by focusing on a theistic evolutionary theory that emphasizes how intimately God has been involved in human evolution and the evolution of all life on Earth from the beginning. This is going to be an important point in my presentation tonight. The emergence of humankind, cognitive and anatomical development. Homo habilis lived 2.4 million years ago. Some important features that made habilis more human-like than ape-like are they were bipedal, they ate meat, and had opposable thumbs that enabled them to touch their fingertips to give them the needed dexterity to make tools. It was the first human industry as well as scientific technology in its infancy. So I think that the development of opposable thumbs was really a major change in the anatomy of our early human ancestors, and that it was engineered by God. Try to pick something up without using your thumb, and you're going to see how difficult that is. But now try fixing or making something with your two hands without using your two thumbs, and you see that's practically impossible. To me, this indicates how critical it was for God to be intimately involved in our evolution. Without opposable thumbs, we probably would be still swinging from the trees right now. The history of religion, creation myths. All cultures have creation myths that are fundamental in the spiritual life of our species. Here are two of the most well-known. The cosmic egg, a major symbol in creation myths, evident in all parts of the world. Ancient Egyptians saw the cosmic egg as the soul of the primeval waters out of which creation arose. Genesis, creation ex nihilo. A God creates from nothing. God created the universe, all life, and Adam and Eve in 6 days, but wipes out sinful humans with the great flood. This 1600 BC Sumerian story was borrowed by the Hebrews, but replaced many gods with one God, and it became the first great monotheistic religion. Judaism based on God's laws, the law of Moses. In the 18th century BC, God made a covenant with the Israelites. Obey my laws, and I will protect you and make you prosperous. The first commandment was, you shall have no other gods before me, unlike other tribes in Palestine that were offering sacrifices to their many different gods. Christianity based on creeds and heresies. Although Jesus taught the people the greatest commandment was to love God and your neighbor, Christianity started to develop with a major focus on creeds and stamping out heresies. The 7 ecumenical councils codified the Christian creeds and identified the heresies to be condemned. Augustine and Aquinas, the great Christian theologians, also emphasized creeds and the need to eliminate heresies. The early history of Western science. 3000 BC, science developed in Egypt and Mesopotamia with astronomy, mathematics, and medicine. These disciplines also influenced the Greek philosophers in the 6th through the 4th centuries BC. Leucippus and Democritus postulated, without any knowledge of modern science or math, that all substances were made from tiny invisible atoms. It's a word they coined. Aristotle studied the natural world by observation, collecting data and specimens and making hypotheses. He called this natural philosophy. It continued to be studied in the Middle Ages in European universities. The Church and Science in the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church. In 1088, the Church established the first European university to prepare students for entrance into the Catholic clergy. Programs in logic, natural philosophy, medicine, theology, and law were taught. Professors were clergymen who were subjected to very careful scrutiny to maintain adherence to church doctrines. But science professors were beginning to stray. The Inquisition added a new level of repression to stamp out heresy, which often was punished by torture and execution. Heresies were considered crimes against God and worse than murder. The development of modern science. Catholic clerics / scientists such as Nicholas Copernicus, Giordano Bruno, and Galileo were punished for heresies against church doctrines. Bruno was burned at the stake for his heretical science and religious views. Copernicus died before he could be punished for saying the earth was not the center of the universe. And Galileo was under house arrest for 9 years until his death for proving Copernicus' theory. The church was becoming overbearing and stifling the emerging new theories of science that contradicted church doctrines. The science and religion conflict heats up. Were humans made in the image of God? Were we descended from apes? Or could both be true? The battle lines are drawn. Science is pitted against church doctrine in areas such as new scientific discoveries versus creationist biblical views, evolution by chance versus God as supernatural creator, and descent from great apes versus humans made in the image of God. 19th century scientists believed both in God and in evolution through natural laws. Astronomer Sir John Herschel and geologist Sir Charles Lyell were leading scientists in England who believed in a theistic evolution where God was guiding the development of species over time rather than by miraculously creating perfect species on Earth, which was a creationist doctrine of both the Anglican and Catholic churches. Charles Darwin and his family were free-thinking Unitarians and disagreed with Anglican Church creationist views. The teachings of Herschel stirred Darwin's soul and guided him into the field of biology and evolutionary research. But church doctrine was driving him away from religion and a childhood love of God. Herschel on Darwin's evolution. In 1859, Darwin sent Herschel an advance copy of his Origin of Species, but he said, "I have heard that Herschel says my book is the law of Higgly-Piggly. What this exactly means, I do not know, but it is evidently very contemptuous. If true, this is a great blow and discouragement." Herschel believed God was intimately involved in the step-by-step process of evolution, while Darwin, at best, could only say that maybe God created a mechanism that allowed for nature to decide the end results more or less by chance. Herschel's critique of Darwin. We cannot accept the principle of arbitrary and casual variation and natural selection as a sufficient account of the past and present organic world. An intelligence, guided by a purpose, must be continually in action to bias the directions of the steps of change, to regulate their amount, to limit their divergence, and to continue them in a definite course. We do not believe that Mr. Darwin means to deny the necessity of such intelligent direction, but it does not, so far as we can see, enter into the formula of his law, and without it, we are unable to conceive how the law can have led to the results. Now, I think that Herschel's critique is also a brilliant statement of the meaning of theistic evolution, where God is involved in even the details of the creation of all life on Earth. This doesn't mean that chance doesn't play a role in all the variety of life that evolves. We know from science that that is true. But I am sure God is delighted in unexpected results, yet still holds the decision on the final outcomes. Darwin's rebellion against the church. The schism between science and religion widens. The Enlightenment brought a measure of relief for science from the dogmatism of the Catholic Church, but the Anglican Church proved to be just as repressive and dogmatic as Catholicism. Darwin denounces the church. As his disbelief grew stronger, Darwin said he could hardly see how anyone ought to wish Christianity to be true, for if so, the plain language of the text seems to show that the men who do not believe, and this would include my father, my brother, and almost all my best friends, will be everlastingly punished. And this is a damnable doctrine. Sadly, the pain caused by the church drove Darwin to agnosticism and to exclude God from evolution. This eventually would open the door to atheism in modern science. Creationists' attack on evolution. Atheistic science and Christian creationism are an impediment to unity of science and religion. 1925, the Scopes monkey trial. Fundamentalist creationists fight atheistic evolution in court, which was being taught in U.S. schools. They won the trial, but they lost the battle. Evolution continued to be taught in public schools. 1987, the Supreme Court rules creationism is not constitutional and can't be taught in public schools. 1991, the evangelicals take the term intelligent design, ID, from 19th century English clergyman William Paley's Natural Theology to continue to fight against evolution. The Discovery Institute is set up to advance a science of intelligent design. However, most religions now believe in theistic evolution, which God is guiding, but ID continues to deny evolution, seemingly due to a deep-seated creationist views. How to reunite science and religion? By accepting a theistic evolutionary theory. Then hopefully science and religion can work together to prevent our own self-destruction and the destruction of the planet. Inferences from theistic evolution. God evolved the anatomy, genetics, and cognition of hominins over the past 3 million years or so. God said we should fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion over every living thing. Through God's development of human genetics, we became territorial and extremely aggressive hunters and reached the top of the food chain. Perhaps as a means to gain the power and confidence to subdue the earth and take dominion. Over time, God lifted us out of the controls of nature so we could live anywhere on earth and adapt to any environment. When Adam and Eve were born to Stone Age parents, but were receiving God's love, they no longer needed the predatory instincts of animals. Those genes would have been turned off by epigenetics when God's love became dominant. But God's commandment was disobeyed. Adam and Eve became divided beings and lost their inheritance of God's love. Thus, their descendants inherited the super aggressive traits of predatory animals. Humans took dominion over the world by force, not God's love, spawning traits of cruelty, the love of war, and greed for power and wealth. Understanding evolution from a theistic viewpoint can help mend the conflict of science and religion. Then religion can provide the path to resolving our divided nature with the return of Christ to bring about God's kingdom of love. We hope the science and the divine principle of creation, which focuses on the atom, can also provide a realistic bridge between the physical world and the spiritual world in the future. The unity of science, religion, and spirituality may be the key to inheriting God's love to bring peace on earth. In conclusion, I would say that humankind has used our physical senses and our cognitive abilities very well through science to invent many things to make life more comfortable and enjoyable. But we have also created more and more destructive weapons of war which threaten our very existence. It is time to enhance our spirituality and activate our spiritual senses so that we can know God and the spirit world directly and inherit fully God's love. Then when science and religion and spirituality are united, we may be able to subdue the earth and have dominion over every living thing with God's love to bring peace and prosperity to all people and to save our planet from ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. You've brought up so many historical issues. The list is long of the issues that you've raised here, which I'm sure there's lots of people in the audience who are eager to chime in. Before they do, let's welcome today's respondent, Jim Fleming, who's here, a former professor at Colby College. We'd love to hear from you now, Jim. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think there'll be abundant time for discussion. I'll keep my remarks relatively short. Henry and I spent a year together at HJI. UTS is now HJI Graduate School. And I thank him for this presentation on the unity of science, religion, and spirituality. I found his approach really a big picture approach, going, as you just heard, going from prehistory to the present. Refreshing and stimulating presentation, opening up plenty of themes for discussion. Henry supports the evolution of humans from early hominid ancestors, with God intervening to add a divine spark to Adam and Eve. At this point, things dramatically change, but not for the better, because of the almost immediate lapse from grace and into ignorance. All of humankind is still conflicted in body and spirit. Nature is, quote, groaning in travail, and we are still searching for truth.
Dr. Fleming, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Henry, if you could stop sharing your screen, then we could see Dr. Fleming more easily.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, let me try to get out of it.
There should be a stop share button that's red.
Oh, there it is. Oh, sorry. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so the divine spark was added to the early hominids, but immediately we blew it. And Henry asked, can we save humankind and the planet from destruction and from ourselves? His answer is yes. That's very encouraging. By accepting theistic evolution, which is acceptable to most mainline Christians, according to Henry. And we could also save the planet by resolving our divided nature at the time of the return of Christ. But let me go into some additional dimensions of this issue of religion and science and spirituality. And I'll start with a couple basic definitions. That science is secular knowledge of understanding derived from experience, from study, or from reflection. But there are vast chasms between, say, the science of observational astronomy, which Copernicus was promoting, and cosmological speculation, which is more closely aligned with things like theology. It's a big chasm between assembling skeletal remains and theorizing about the descent of man. It's the nature of science to seek new techniques and new truths. So science is more an activity than a thing. Science is many activities. Science is many things. Religion refers to particular systems of faith and worship, belief in or acknowledgement of some superhuman power or powers. So while we have focused here on Christianity, religion is about behavior, and it too is many things. As you might be aware, scholars have proposed more than one model addressing the relationship of science and religion. Still, the general public holds the Galileo affair and Darwinian controversies as paradigmatic, with religion often seen as resisting or opposing the program and the progress of science. Now, there's 4 standard models of the relationship, of the interaction, I should say, of science and religion. And the dominant one historically has been conflict or warfare. And we heard quite a bit of that in the presentation today. This thesis says that facts and faith are in heated battle. They're in opposition. Religion is in retreat, basically before scientific theories. This position, which is now largely discredited, was advanced in best-selling books by John William Draper, 1874, who directed his animus at the Pope and the infallibility doctrine of Catholicism. Quoting Thomas Henry Huxley, who was Darwin's supporter, quote, "Our great antagonist is the Roman Catholic Church, the one great spiritual organization which resists the progress of science and modern civilization." The other exemplar of conflict is another best-selling book by Andrew Dixon White, 1896, the president of Cornell University, who held that truth need not be stretched to fit the doctrines of theologians. And he wrote that religion, or recognizing power in the universe and living by the golden rule, often fostered science. Theological doctrine smothered it. So his opposition was with theology, not with religion itself. So that's the first model, was conflict, warfare, and that's a very popular approach. Religion is still under fire, not always from science, but sometimes from secular humanism. That's another story. A second model is separation. Science and religion are incommensurate, and they're incommensurate magisteria. Magisteria defined as systems of fact and authority, authoritative systems. Science and religion speak to different human needs and aspirations. This point of view is advocated by theologians such as Karl Barth and Rudolf Bultmann, and most practicing scientists. And recently, Stephen Jay Gould, a popular author in evolutionary geology, who said that they're incommensurate, they're separate realms of speaking. Most scientists consider religion irrelevant to their daily activity. So separation is the second model. A third model is called relevance and interaction. Science and religion are aspects of larger social and cultural practices and are partially overlapping. That is, they're somewhat commensurate magisteria. Quote, "The interaction of science and Christianity has been of profound importance in shaping Western civilization." This is advocated by sociologists who studied this, such as Robert K. Merton, who had a thesis on the Protestant ethic and the rise of science. And it's also held by current members of the science studies community. That science is in some ways socially shaped or even constructed, and that religion responds to social needs as well as to divine imperatives. And in this camp, you can include the Jesuits, the Islamic scholars who served as the bridge between ancient and medieval science, and the Protestants, who cultivated a sort of a cordial union with the Reformation as the twin brother of the scientific revolution. That's the third model. Then the fourth is the unity and interdependence model, that reality is one, that revelation and reason should be complementary. And this is advocated by process theologians, most world religions, including unificationism. And here are some examples from world religions and world scripture. From Jainism, one who knows the inner self knows the external world as well. One who knows the external world knows the inner self as well. And from Confucianism, man is the heart and mind of heaven and earth and the visible embodiment of the five elements. And from unificationism, each person is a microcosm of the universe. Your body is made of all the elements of the world. And so one way to expand this conversation, not that it needs direct expansion today, but one way to look to the future is the relationship between world religions. This is Young-Un Kim's, one of her volumes of, I don't know if that's visible.
Yep.
Religions of the World. She actually says that we need to be unificationists for the world, not just, of course, in our original title was of Unification of World Christianity, but we think about the world religions. And then there's the dimension of spirituality, which I think we could talk more about. And what I've noticed is the spirituality that unificationists are currently practicing, kind of a resonance with heaven, a prayer that goes into a feeling and an expression of love and truth that allows you to resonate with larger forces than yourself. And in reading the memoir of Reverend Moon, I find that there's that kind of a resonance in his thinking from early childhood, the resonance with all things, with all animals, with all plants, with all nature, and then with all people. And that sort of loving resonance, which is not particularly a religion, but it's certainly a spiritual practice that I think we're deeply involved in right now. So instead of religion and science, we can add that dimension of spirituality. And instead of just religion, we could have another key term, which is theology, which is what Andrew Dixon White was talking about. Theology is an ancient Greek term referring to legendary or philosophical accounts of the gods. But by the 14th century, it meant the study of God's nature, attributes, and relations with humans and the universe. So the interrelationship of science and theology, let's say cosmology as a speculative science and theology as reflections on the nature of absolutes, these things have more resonance, perhaps, than the practice of religion, which is aligning yourself with your perceived will of God. And then there's another term. This is the one I'm currently working on. And that fourth key term is technology. We heard a little bit about it by, the opposable thumb, and you're able to make tools, and you're going to make the world a little bit more comfortable. But the medieval roots of this really refer to the mechanical or useful arts, applied sciences, if you will. And there, one of the key players is Sir Francis Bacon. Bacon advocated the study of nature and the development of the useful arts as a way for humans to overcome the fall of man. Transcendence was to be attained not by withdrawing from the world, but by engaging with the world and by developing knowledge of and intimate mastery over nature. But it has to be done with a proper attitude. Now, engineers, which is a profession that emerged in the 19th century, the first engineers were military engineers, and eventually they developed civil engineering. But engineers aimed to relieve the human condition, and they were inspired by this idea from Bacon that we could regain paradise on earth and meld religion with belief in the attainment of salvation through technology. And in that sense, it would be relieving, for example, relieving Eve's pain in childbirth and removing Adam's curse to struggle for existence from the dust of the earth. There's a very interesting book. I think it's worthy of further expansion. It's a very short book. It's a very thin book. It's called The Religion of Technology by David Noble. And I'm not going to review the book here, but he does give the case for engineers taking this as kind of their inspiration, sometimes taking it in the wrong direction to become egotistical and think that they can play God. And perhaps one of the early examples of playing God was in the work of Victor Frankenstein, who thought he could overcome death by his medicine, by his creation of a creature. And so he follows through on this theme that comes out of the Middle Ages and brings it into the 21st century. So the vanguard of the movement of the religion of technology were the engineers, and they considered themselves really quite egotistically the agents of divine restoration. Now, playing God, I think in my sense of it, they were gaining technique, they were seeking omnipotence, omniscience, perhaps omnipresence, and all the different inventions were leading in that direction. But they didn't have ultimate love. They weren't really gods in themselves. But that's another story involving the religion of technology. So the issues that Henry has brought up are quite diverse, quite broad, cover all of human history, and worthy of much further discussion. So thank you, Henry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. We've the four models of the relationship between science, religion, and the interposition of theology and engineering in our topic is quite an expansion of today's conversation. Henry presented the conflict that he's discovered in his research as being between atheistic science and creationism. That's what I think Henry said is where the big standoff is right now. Do you concur with that? That's kind of the front line of the standoff, or the isolation of science from religion is between creationism and atheistic science? And that's a question for you, Jim. Jim Fleming.
Well, it's certainly been the focus of 20th century. The Scopes trial, all the conflicts, the cases that Henry mentioned, I think had been, and earlier it had been with the infallibility of the Pope and the Catholics, but the creationist fundamentalists took over that mantle, and I was attempting to move the focus. I did mention that there's other religions and there's other practices and there's other approaches. And so I suppose unification has to be a bigger tent, a bigger way to approach this issue that includes those discussions, but I don't think they're going to be resolved with headbutting. And the question of atheism is interesting too, because Darwin did move, and Henry said this, Darwin moved towards agnosticism. He was trained to be ordained in the Anglican Church and did not take ordination. And of course he had a more religious wife, and moved towards agnosticism. But still, in The Origin of Species, he added, and especially in the second printing, I think, he added about the grandeur in this view that there is a creator, that he doesn't specify where these species came from. He just specifies how they change. So people read that and they got, in a way, bent out of shape because he didn't have God intervening in every step, and others got it bent out of shape because he included some religion in the origin, some comment about it near the end, that how grand it was. I personally think that there was a bit of theodicy in Darwin's understanding, that he couldn't figure out how, a loving God could be so busy to deal with every sparrow and every earthworm and every creature in the world, when he was in essence trying to become sort of the Newton of biology. He said these are general principles, these are things that I've observed by traveling the world and by looking at it, and that he was presenting more a theodicy than a theology.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. And let's now turn to our audience.